Okay, so today we're going to get into 8.3, which is over volume of spheres. So, like we did in 8.1 and 8.2, this is very similar to that. So here's your volume of a sphere equation. It is V equals 4/3 times pi times r to the third power. So a few different things. We know with the cone it was 1/3. Now we have 4/3. And with a sphere, we don't have height because it's not a height with a sphere. You're just talking about the radius all the way around. So now instead of radius to the second power, you are now talking about radius to the third power. So a little different equation, but that is what we'll be using for a sphere. So like this says, finding volume of a sphere is done the same way as finding volume of a cylinder or cone. Plug in the information that is given to you and simplify to find the volume. So they'll provide you with the radius or diameter and you have to cut it in half, and then you are able to plug it in and simplify to find your answer from there. So let's go ahead and jump into an example. So this says, find the volume of the sphere, round your answer to the nearest tenth. So we have to use our sphere equation. V equals 4/3 pi, 4/3 pi r cubed. So here there's actually only one thing for us to plug in because there's no height in this problem. So r is the only thing we have to plug in. So I'm going to bring down everything else. V equals 4/3 pi. And then we check. And here we see that our radius is 2.2 because it's halfway from the middle to the edge. If this was all the way across, that would be considered your diameter and you would have to cut it in half. But here they only give us halfway, so that is our radius. So that is what we'll plug in for r. So it's 2.2 to the third power. So now bring down V equals 4/3 times pi times. Here we have 2.2 to the third power, so we need to plug that in and figure out what that is to simplify it. So in your calculator, 2.2, and then if you have a T1 or TI 30XA, you hit the second second 1 button, so 2.2, second 1, and that will take it to the third power for you, and that is 10.648. So 10.648, and then we're able to just multiply each of these three together at the same time. So in my calculator, I'll type 4/3 times pi times 10.648, and you get 44.6022, and so on. This says to round your answer to the nearest tenth. So if I'm rounding to the nearest tenth, the 10th spot is the spot right behind the decimal point. If I'm rounding to that spot, I look at the number behind it. So the number behind it is 0. That tells me to keep the 10th spot the same. So 6 stays as 6. So my final answer is 44.6. And my unit is centimeters cubed. So there's your final answer, 44.6 centimeters cubed. Let's look at another one. So they say find the volume of this sphere. Okay, we're still using the same equation, V equals 4/3 pi r cubed. And we still need to fill in our radius. So V equals 4/3 pi. Here, the length they give us is 42 centimeters. But this is going all the way across the circle. So 42 is our diameter, but our radius is half of that. So half of 42 is 21. So that is what we fill in for r. So it's 21 to the third power. So then we need to simplify 21 to the third power. So I'll bring down V equals 4/3 times pi times, type in 21, hit second 1, and you will get 9,261. And remember, 21 to the third power just stands for 21 times 21 times 21. So if you type that in your calculator, you will also get 9,261. Now we can just multiply this out. 4/3 times pi times 9,261, and you will get 38,792.386, and so on. Again, the directions say round to the nearest tenth. So the 10th spot is the 3. I look at the number behind, is 8. That tells me to round up because it's 5 or higher. So it's telling me to round the 10th spot up 1 spot. So 3 will then go to 4. So my volume would be, everything in front stays the same. So 38,792 point, the 3 rounded up, so 0.4. And then my unit is centimeters cubed. Okay? So there is your final answer for that one. Alright, so let's go ahead and skip to this example. They'll also, like with cones and cylinders, they might ask you to find the radius when the volume is what is given to you. Okay, so this one will be a little different than before. So with this one, we still have to fill in what the volume is, which here is 288 pi. So 288 pi equals 4/3 pi r cubed. Okay, so something you could do would be to multiply this by pi, multiply this by pi, and then work it out from there. But a trick that will make it easier for you would be if you acted as pi as like a variable, kind of. It's not a variable, but just kind of to give you a reference for this. We're trying to solve for r. Okay? If we're trying to solve for r, whatever's on the same side of r needs to move. So we need to move the 4/3 pi over here. To do that, we divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by 4/3 pi. When I do that, those cancel, bring me down r to the 3rd power. Equals. So here, there's something interesting that's going to happen and makes it easier on you. You don't have to actually type out 288 times pi and then divide that by 4/3 times pi. If you have a pi divided by pi, if you have a pi on top and bottom, those pi's cancel out. So all you're left with is 288 divided by 4/3. So in your calculator, you'll type 288 divided by 4/3, and that gives you 216. So now we're left with 216 equals r to the 3rd. And this is similar to what we've done in the past as well when we dealt with square roots and exponents and that types of stuff. So here, if we have r to the 3rd power and we need to get r by itself, we need to remember how to get rid of that 3rd power. And hopefully you remember the opposite of taking something to the 3rd power is to take the cube root of it. So I'm going to take the cube root of both sides because that will have the power of 3 and the cube root cancel out, leaving me with r, which is what I want, and then I have to take the cube root of 216. So in your calculator you type 216, and then the cube root button on this calculator is 2nd 0. And that will give you r equals 6. And you didn't even have to round your answer to the nearest whole number because it came out as a whole number. So your final answer is r equals 6 inches. R equals 6 inches. Alright, let's see if you can try one on your own. So I want you to try this one on your own. They give you the volume, you need to find the radius. Okay, so pause the video, try this on your own, see if you can get it. So hopefully you tried this. Here, we're given the volume, so we're going to plug in 36 pi for V. And that equals, we just bring down the 4/3 times pi times r cubed. Okay, so here, like we did before, we want to get this r cubed by itself. So to do that, we need to move the 4/3 pi. These are all being multiplied, so the opposite would be to divide by 4/3 pi on both sides. Those both cancel. And over here, we have a pi over a pi, so the pi's also cancel. Then we're left with 36 divided by 4/3. So we type that in, 36 divided by 4/3, and we'll get 27. Equals r cubed is what comes down. So we have 27 equals r cubed. Okay, so now, like we talked about, to get rid of a power of 3, we have to take the opposite, which is take the cube root. So I'm going to take the cube root of the right side and the cube root of the left side. Power of 3, cube root cancel out. Leave me with r. And then in my calculator, I hit 27, second 0, and that tells me the cube root of 27 is 3. So your final answer is r equals 3 meters. So there's your final answer for that. So with those types of problems, you're really just looking to isolate or get the r to the third by itself by dividing the 4/3 pi over. And then after that, you have the power of 3 you need to get rid of, so you take the cube root on both sides to do that.